Thank you very much for joining H2R Consulting and Jimmy Burrows for this virtual panel discussion on leading in the future of work. The topic's becoming more and more important in the recent years anyway, with a lot of candidates actually wanting flexibility around working from home, but now, for obvious reasons, it's even more relevant. Which is why we have asked 3 leaders to talk to us today regarding the challenges they've faced and the strategies they've put in place to deal with them. We thank them very much for their time and for their insight. Jimmy Burrows, who will MC the upcoming panel discussion, is helping leaders to become future fit and get better business results, both here in New Zealand and practicing what he preaches with overseas clients too. Special thanks to Jimmy for working with us on this. So, using the wonders of modern technology, I hope you can sit back and enjoy the upcoming panel discussion on leading in the future of work.
Well, good morning, everyone. Fantastic to have such an awesome panel with us this morning. My name's Jimmy Burrows. Just by way of introduction, I have been working as a coach and mentor for the last 2.5 years in the remote space. So working remotely from a number of countries overseas to help leaders transition to a more flexible workplace. My background is working in the corporate space, predominantly in L&D, OD, and engagement and recruitment. So I'm thrilled to be here with a fantastic panel today who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. Helen, if I can ask you to go first.
Kia ora tātou, ko Helen O'Sullivan tōku ingoa koho te kaiwhakahaere matua o Crocker's Property Group. My name is Helen O'Sullivan. I'm the Chief Executive of Crocker's Property Group.
Thanks, Helen. And Kate?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm the GM of People at Flyway and AXMA in Australia. I've got sort of like 20 plus years experience in HR in both operational and corporate environments. So, bring that to the table today.
Fantastic. And Phil?
Thanks, James, and Hale. Phil Clark, I'm head of the People and Capability team within BDO across New Zealand.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So as you can see, we've got a fantastic panel with a really wide range of experiences. And one of the things we're really trying to get into today is how are leaders approaching the COVID and beyond COVID world? So we've got a number of questions we're going to be working through and just seeking, I guess, their knowledge, their wisdom, and some ideas from them that might help other leaders who are out there who might be either struggling or looking for some inspiration in how to proceed from this point. So my first question then, team, this morning is, what have you noticed most in the move to the way we are operating now in a COVID world? And I'll start with Phil.
I think it's pretty straightforward, James. I think there's 2 types of different people at the moment. Those who are able to work from home and those who aren't, excluding those who are in central services. And what we're finding is ultimately people have adjusted, in BDO in particular, have adjusted very well to working remotely and working from home. So thankfully, we've made the great investments in technology and people are not only able to work, but they're definitely enabled to do their entire job from home, which is great to see.
That's great. And Kate and Helen, what are your thoughts?
I guess, everything that Phil said, but I'd probably say it's slightly different in so much as I think there's been a bit of a crisis, so there's been adrenaline, there's been, assessing information, decision making. So some people having that information and feeling the pressures, other people not knowing and that question mark. I think in our work environment, we've got a real mix of, we do have some essential services within our mixture of businesses. So we do have some people who are at work, so the challenges that go with that. And then we've got some people who are at home who are not working, and then some people who are working from home. And so each of those groups have got really, really different challenges. And as a business, quite a few different needs to try and look after those teams, at this time and continue with the business at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So my next question is to Helen. And Helen, I'm interested in what you've done to help your people deal with the impact of COVID.
First and foremost, I think the key thing we've done is to keep them working. We provide property management services, we provide body corporate management services, and we do real estate sales. The real estate sales team is probably the one that we're having the greatest difficulty keeping moving. But there are still things happening in the market that they are able to focus on. The property management team and the body corporate teams are including all of these support teams that go with that. We've kept serving the customers, and we've transitioned all of our meetings to an online format as well, which has meant that our clients have had to make this transition to remote working with us. So I guess the key thing has been to keep feeding information and processes into tools and assistance to the team. And also we're using a tool called Ask Your Team, which is a survey mechanism, which we used to use it to run what I called whareirama, which is basically a strategic view of the business. But we're now using it to run a weekly wellbeing survey to just check in and see how our people are doing, and where we need to reach out and provide more support and assistance to them.
I love that. I love that repurposing of a tool that you've already got for to allow the ability to cope and check in, temperature check how your team are going. That's fantastic. And I'm sure there are lots of other tools out there. Have you guys got any other tools that you are using that you've repurposed?
Within our business?
Yeah.
Well, my weekly email has become a daily dose of my version of humour, which, some people seem to find it funny. I find it funny.
Fantastic. And maybe that's a question I'll throw out to the wider team is how are you keeping a sense of fun or a sense of humour at work right now?
I think from most people on the traps, James or Jimmy, there's the photograph of your new workstation. Some of them are entertaining setups that people have across the country. We're also doing some wellbeing challenges, or we'll be rolling that out over the course of the next few weeks. So there's a lot of aspects that we can do to keep people as connected as possible. We're also running, I think, Friday drinks, or this week Thursday drinks, with most teams are getting together. So we're trying to keep as much normality in the day-to-day as we normally can. So it's working, and people have adjusted, like I said earlier, really well to the changes and have taken it all in their stride, which is, from my perspective, really pleasing to see.
I love that. And Kate, what's going on at Flyway?
Yeah, look, sort of a real mix. So again, both in the Australian, New Zealand business, and some of the situations, it's a little bit like Phil, the Zoom drinks on a Friday, which is great. But that's a very small part of the group. I think it's been, sort of Facebook, messaging. It's been, the checking in from a repurposing. In fact, not technology, but within my team, very much making one-on-one calls to people and actually sense checking that they're okay, where they're at. That might be, messenger, that might be email, that might be a phone call. Everyone's got sort of their preferences. But the team has definitely been going back to, I guess, those basics of making sure that we're connecting. And again, if you look at our team, we've got a really large, section of our business is not working at the moment. So they're at home. And these are people who are used to being out and about, working, and with a lot of flexibility and a lot of variety in their day. So we want to make sure that they're okay. Then we've got people who are working a little bit from home, but not much. So again, want to make sure that they're okay and their needs. And obviously those people who are working a lot are probably feeling a different sort of pressure. So, I think with my team, we're having coffee catch-ups on Friday. We did gumboot day last week. So everyone wore their gumboots. So just trying to keep it real and bring some of those things from work, but into a new way of working. But you're definitely having to segment it quite differently, being the fact that we've got such a diverse workforce and each of those needs are quite different.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and without wanting to be contrived about it as well. So not wanting to do fancy dress parties just because everybody does fancy dress. What's really going to appeal, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. The people are under stress and under pressure right now. So what's going to appeal to them to help them feel connected, and what could be fun for them? That's going to allow them to feel part of the business, part of the team, and part of the whānau still as they go through the working from home transition, or not being able to be out in their van or their truck, as you mentioned yesterday when we spoke. How do they still feel part of the organization if they're not doing what they normally do? Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Thank you.
I think the other
Helen,
thing,
question.
to add to that, James.
Oh, go ahead, Phil. Yeah.
Sorry, just to add to that is, I think people are actually enjoying being invited to their colleagues' home virtually. So people, a few sort of house tours have been quite useful and quite entertaining to see how different people live. It's been quite fun. And then the one thing I'm aware of this week is one of my team members are setting up a scavenger hunt. Not sure exactly how it's going to work, but only move so fast. So we're going to see how that kind of plays out. But apparently she was very pleased with it. So looking forward to that on Thursday afternoon.
That sounds like fun. We're doing an Easter egg hunt, which I've come up with a way of doing it, which I think will be fun again. Have to check in with other people. Do you think this is funny?
I love that idea of doing Zoom cribs, though, as you're sort of walking around with your phone in a Zoom meeting. This is my fridge. These are the things I'm doing. This is my kid smearing jam on the television. It must be, there's a lot of challenges out there right now.
Well, yesterday I was in a conference call, and this was this was actually sent right into the middle of it. It was my daughter with an airplane on one of these straight into the middle of the conference call, and I've got such a great reaction that she went back in for a second go. So it's definitely keeping it real, and I think to Phil's point, really you're getting to know a whole new side of people in your team.
I think that point about people's families coming into the picture is actually a really important one. We made the point to our team quite early on, hey, look, work's invaded your home. So it is us. It's actually work that's out of place. It's not your home that's out of place. It's not your family that's out of place. It's work. So if your kids are trotting past your audio conference, then that is absolutely fine. Don't feel that you have to keep apologising for it. Please don't. Actually, I'm sorry I'm in your lounge because it's not where I'm supposed to be, but this is how we are today. So, it's actually great your kids are there. And I think it's kind of a good thing for business to take a moment and just be a bit more human. And, in some ways it's a good readjustment for us. At the end of the day, business is all about people, right? Hey tangata, hey tangata, hey tangata. So being a bit more understanding and a bit more human about that's actually probably a good thing for us all to do a bit of a reset on.
Yeah, I think that's really nice.
I'm so in agreement. The bring your whole self to work. Well, now your whole self is at home and work at the same time.
Home with your work.
you get to experience. Yeah, you get to experience it all at once, which is I think, as you say, really leveling and humanizing. And hopefully we can remember that in the post-COVID environment, that humanity is one of the things that got us through.
Totally.
Absolutely. Question, and this is an open question. How have you been connecting with your clients? So that could be your customers or your suppliers, and what have you learned from that?
Well, I'll kick off.
Go for it.
I think that again, keeping it real. So probably the best type of communication has been, either like this or on the phone, actually connecting with people versus, emails. I think if we look at it in two scenarios, one's your customers, and you really need to understand where they're at. And I think there's two elements to that. One was the, oh my goodness, we're in the middle of this, is what's happening, and then we've got the Wednesday date, what's happening, what are we doing? And then there's the now, right? So there's that sort of that crisis scenario of what we can do, what we can't do. Gosh, we're rushing to that. But really making sure that we're working with our customers in regards to checking in with them about what they're doing, what their thoughts are, what's coming down the pipeline, how can we work with them, what those solutions are. And I think that the more time and exposure you can get with your customer, the closer to your customer that you can be, the better. So from my perspective, that's the phone calls and the Zoom calls and the keeping it real. I think with your suppliers, it probably goes into some of that stuff that we spoke about, or might talk about a little bit more in regards to, hey, how are we managing the business? What's working? Cash flow, all those sorts of things. But again, I think it's about going, right, if we're closed right now, what can we put to the side? Again, we've talked to those people. They know where they're at. They know what the expectations are. And the second is, what's the way forward? And I don't think any of us have got a magic 8 ball, or if we did, gosh, what an amazing, that's what we should be getting into. But it's about, again, having open conversations with those suppliers about what you're needing, what you think you might be needing, or if it's around payments, it's about making sure you're having those proactive conversations. And sometimes those can be difficult, but I think the key point is to start somewhere and start having those conversations, because ignoring a problem isn't going to make it go away.
Yeah, I think, James, with our approach to kind of keeping in contact with clients, it's very simple. We kind of keep in contact as much as we can in this environment, which is all by phone or email or video conferences, which are working extremely well. The reality is like most organisations, we're a relationships-based business, so it's actually quite hard for our people to not be able to go see their clients and be close to their clients. And I think the clients are in exactly the same position as us, and I think everyone is looking forward to us coming out of level 4, going down to level 3, and then hopefully returning to level 2 at some time in the near future, where life will go back to a little bit a bit more normal feel to it. So that I think the limiting the interaction that we have with clients at the moment is quite hard for everyone. But we're doing all we can to keep in contact, and clients are much the same, because I think it's fair to say a lot of clients need us right now. And our people definitely want to be part of the solutions to a lot of the problems that our clients face at the moment, which is great to see. But it's possible, but I think the preference is for people to have that face-to-face interaction wherever possible, which in this environment is just an unfortunate situation that we can't have that face-to-face contact.
And can we dig a bit deeper on that, Phil? What sort of questions are you asking your clients right now?
It's highly varied. So some of our clients are, business as usual, just driving forward. Some are completely disruptive and had to, put everything on pause. So it depends on the industry that people are within. And, we've got thousands, tens of thousands of clients across the country, all are going through different things at the moment. So the questions are very varied, and they have to be, Jimmy. We have to understand each client's needs as they are. There's no manual to this. There's no one size fits all approach. So that's why the 800 people that we employ across the country are so important to maintain those relationships with individual clients and keep it, as Kate said, as personable as possible. So yeah, I'd love to say there's a formula that solves all problems, but unfortunately there's not.
Yeah, and I think you drew out exactly the key point. Oh, go ahead, Helen.
One of the things I've become very conscious of is the need to review all of your written communications, because the reality is, we've got a really large client base and we can't possibly serve all of them personally. We are actually finding that the online tools are remarkably effective and have had an uptake in demographics you would think would be quite resistant quite quickly, because I think the realities of travelling across Auckland for meetings are such that people are ready for a slightly different way of working. And while this has been a kind of a brutal tool that gets you to move from A to B, I think it won't replace everything, but I think post-COVID there's a much greater role for tools like this as a communication tool. But the need for your written communication, you've got to have some written communication, because you can't possibly talk individually to 22,000 people. But you've got to be very careful and very clear about your written communications and run them through a couple of different sets of eyes to make sure that you are conveying the message that you're actually trying to convey and not kind of inadvertently saying something you don't mean to say. People are very sensitive right now for really obvious reasons, and you've just got to make sure your written comms do actually, and it's so easy to get it wrong when you're in a hell of a hurry to get something out, but you do have to take that extra moment to reread it.
I can completely agree with you, Helen. I think you've hit two nails on the head there. One around the need for reviewing written communication is so important, because I think everyone knows that intention can often get lost in email through translation. So you might write an email with a certain tone in mind that just doesn't come across to the reader, which is really important. I think you're framing every single communication with a very structured approach. And the same sort of framework, I think, is important, so people get that consistency coming through. And then secondly, I think you did right around the catalyst that COVID-19 has created with everyone having to work from home where possible, is that I think going forward people will be more comfortable using different ways of working that they ordinarily haven't trialed, because that's just a fear of getting started. But once people do, they'll just work out, is there a better way? And do I really want to spend 45 minutes in traffic? Going from one end of Auckland City.
45 minutes, that's just down the road.
Yeah, that's CBD across town, basically. So especially going through Keith.
Well, like an hour and a half each way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people will work out actually efficiencies is what they'll find, and they'll look at how can we do this in a more efficient way, and it'll become pretty prevalent at the point in time. So I'm looking forward to that change being enacted, because I think it'll quieten our streets up a bit and be part of the congestion solution from an Auckland point of view.
Totally.
Sorry if I just jump on there as well, is that I think not just in Auckland or your local environment, but I think, to Helen's point, there's nothing like, actual connections with people. But I think this is also going to change the way we look at travel in regards to whether it be going to Wellington or whether it be going to Sydney or Melbourne or whatever it might be, is again, as long as we've got some of that relationship with people, and keeping it real, I think that we will use these tools far more than perhaps we were sometimes, which will actually also impact on, those who travel. Maybe when you first start traveling, you think it's great and exciting, but really, in fact, it becomes quite, jading and tiring. And so I think that we've shown how we can run a business and keep connected using these tools. And so I think that may change the frequency in which some people travel. And I think to Phil's point, just about communication as well, it's when we're reading things, you've got to realize that when people are reading your emails, they're reading them from their own level of anxiety or stress or personal situation. And so, I think you guys just nailed it in regards to keeping it simple, keeping it clear, but having a number of people read it. So the key messages that you're wanting to get across, you've got across, because that's the problem with written communication, is that it's interpreted the way the person's feeling and reading it, and there's not necessarily that ability for the feedback. And that's where things, can fall down or come unstuck a little bit. So I think that's a really good one for people to take heed on.
Some really great learnings there. The things that really jumped out at me were being really mindful of intent versus impact. Absolutely, I think we all touched on that one. In any sort of communications, but especially your written communications, because you can't temperature check. There's no one size fits all here. So being really mindful that your customers or your suppliers or your clients are all at different stages right now in their reaction. So being mindful of the need to connect as a human being, but also that they're going to be potentially in different places to other clients. I really like the fact that we drew that out. And I really like the fact that we were talking about the keeping it real, keeping it human again. Everybody has a stressful situation going on, and we're sending messages from a position of stress and anxiety. Whether we outwardly feel it or not, we are in a pressured situation, and those messages are being received from a position of stress and anxiety. So nobody's reacting normally right now. And being mindful of that is probably a great learning for us all to take away. Is actually, I loved your point, Helen, around a couple of sets of eyes, because those people are all going to have different positions in the way they read something, and that's going to really help our clients and customers and suppliers. Cool. Let's talk about money. What choices would you be advising other business leaders to consider from a financial perspective at the moment? And maybe start with Helen.
There's two really. Right now, I think there's short term and long term. Sort of the immediate. And the reality of the immediate is that things are going to cost more money at the moment. There's extra costs to operating the way that we're operating. There's revenue streams that will be impacted. But we have to remember we will come through this. Yes, it will be a different world on the other side of this, but if you lose your capability and your key people now, in a very short term sort of oh my God, I've got to make the next 6 weeks look all right, you lose the ability to capitalise on the opportunities that will come out the other side of it, and also to regather your business. It's going to get harder over the next, a lot depends for all of us on how long this lockdown lasts, how long we're at level 4. But starting to think now that, whereas you were saying earlier, Kate, we're through that Wednesday, which was kind of a big black kind of a door. We got through the Wednesday. Now we're through the next stage. We actually, as leaders, need to be thinking about what comes next. We've still got work to do to get through the next couple of 2.5 weeks, at level 4. But what does level 3 look like for your business? What are you going to need in place? Start thinking about that. And at level 2, what are you going to be able to do that you can't do now? And in making those hard choices about what you're doing now, in terms of the financial bit, that, don't lose sight of the long term, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, great point. And what about others?
I think that was a good summary from Helen, and I guess probably the things that I'm thinking of, and when I'm communicating with my team, or I guess people in business, from our team, is just really around the essential and the non-essential. So definitely looking at what we're doing. Is this money? Is this spend? Is this essential? Is this non-essential? Knowing that some things are going to have been augmented in price. Like right now, we're looking at PPE for our people, so protective clothing, protective equipment that we may not have previously been using, and it's at a premium, right? So you've got additional costs that you weren't expecting, but at the same time, you've also got to make sure that we're looking after that cash, right? So I think from my perspective, it's quite simple. It's making sure essential, non-essential. Where are we at? Making sure we've got a strong awareness of the management of cash, and really strong communication both with our customers in regards to who's paying and when they're paying, in regards to our suppliers, when we're going to be paying them, and keeping it really clear with our people as well.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of lucky enough to be able to say that this is not my area of expertise, and I'm not going to delve too much in the detail of finances. I think I'm in the privileged position to be surrounded by accountants every day who are really good at their job. So I think listening to a lot of what they've been saying, especially some of the leaders in video have been saying in the last few weeks, particularly applying some of the learnings that we had from Christchurch, is don't try and solve medium and long-term problems now. Focus on the problems we have at hand and worry about the medium and long-term problems when more information comes to hand. So just be cautious and be considered. And the key aspect is focus on what you know, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Can I just chat one more thing in there?
Nice. Go
the other thing that's really fundamental is your values are actually, you talk about your values and you kind of do lovely sessions to draw those out and distill them in the good times, but actually your values now are what guides you in the bad times. So fundamental to everything that you're doing should actually be those values, and a lot of the time that makes the decisions really easy, because what do our values say about this? What's changed that makes us chuck our values out the window? Well, actually, right now, this has been their RB drop. So that for us is one of the big things we keep coming back to. What are the values, and how does that, what does that lens say about what we're doing now?
Yeah, I think from an employment brand point of view, Helen, there's a lot of organisations that could potentially come out of the situation stronger than they were when they went into it, because they are adhering to their values and they're being very open and honest about what their values are and how they're using them to drive key decisions. I think from a positive point of view, when the dust settles on the situation, which it will, in the medium to long term, this will be resolved. People remember how they were treated in the bad times, and they will look to organisations who've done an amazingly good job of looking after the people and embracing their people and actually working with their people on solving the problems together. I think it's going to be a key part of that. And the values that you mentioned, rightfully, they frame up those conversations and they frame up the decisions that people make. So that you're right, they're more important now than they've been before.
One of the conversations I had with a leader a couple of weeks ago was around the importance of investing in leadership right now. The premise of the let's cut all training costs, let's take all that out of our business because it's a non-essential service. And he challenged that thinking to say, well, actually, my leaders are the people who are going to get me through this right now. So I need to wrap as much support and investment around them as I can possibly afford without breaking my business. It was a really important consideration for him to take away. What are your thoughts around that right now?
I think it's as we're in level 4, it's quite hard to do that leadership training because at the moment our leaders are extremely busy trying to look after their clients and make sure their clients are well supported. So it's kind of it's a little bit reactive at the moment, which is absolutely fine and understandable in the circumstance. It's more around being close to the leaders and ensuring they get the opportunity of talking and using you as a sounding board. I think going forward though, this uncertainty, which is essentially what COVID-19 has created, I was reading a report from the World Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago, which was basically saying that now majority of people see COVID-19 as primarily an economic issue and secondarily a health crisis, which was fascinating. And so I think a lot of people are nervous about and anxious about what this creates, and they're looking to their leaders for answers. At the moment, the leaders don't have those answers. So again, it's all around making sure the leaders are focusing on the problem at hand, and kind of as an HR person, we've got a role to play in that. And I guess from a development point of view, supporting all leaders over the next 6 months and ensuring that they are able to lead their teams through uncertainty and that they're able to meet the needs of their followers.
Yeah, I totally agree with Phil there, and I think there's the right now scenario. It's the coaching that you can provide, and the being there. I don't think it's a formal scenario. I think that really what we're asking from our leaders in varying levels of the business is the ability to deal with ambiguity, the ability to make decisions with as much good information as they can access at that time. Yeah, and also being an authentic person, right? And in their communication, being authentic about how they're communicating with each other and with their people. So we certainly have got a melting pot, quite a heightened situation here, because some people do struggle with ambiguity. Some people do struggle not having all the answers before making a decision. Some people do struggle with how to keep it human and keep connected with people. So I definitely think there's a huge part right now around keeping it real and touching base with managers around coaching them. Probably less at a formal perspective, but down the track at that level 2 type situation, yeah, maybe we're sitting there. But right now it's about coaching people through the varying challenges that they're experiencing.
I think at the moment, Guy I worked for a couple of roles ago, he had a great line when we were in crisis, which at the time was pretty much all the time. It was lean into your people. And his message to us as people leaders was lean into your people. The harder this gets, the more you lean in. Sure, currently we're leaning in virtually, but that you can't spend right now our key role as leaders is actually to be checking in with our people and helping them to check in with their people. As you say, Kate, the coaching piece. The other thing that I've drawn a lot of inspiration from is there's a Harvard Business Review case study called The Second Fukushima, where they talk about the Fukushima plant. There was the one that had the huge meltdown, but there was a second one where they actually succeeded in not having a big meltdown. And they talk about the leadership style, because the solution wasn't obvious. And the guy who was in charge of the site got everybody together. They came up with a plan. They started to implement it. It turned out after about 3 days, they realized they were doing the wrong thing. And he had the courage and the humility to come back and go, I don't think this is working. What do we think? And everybody went, oh, thank God, you're right. No, it's not working. And they found another solution. And I think that's a really key message for us. Again, we don't have all the answers. No one can possibly have the answers right now because it's a completely unknown situation. But collectively, there's so much more capability. One person on their own is never going to know all the answers to this. Collectively, as a team, we've got all the pieces. It's all about throwing the question out to your team and having the courage to actually not think you've got all the answers and to ask other people to help you solve the problem, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely good point, Helen. I think inclusion is probably the one thing that any leader should be focusing on right now. It's inclusion. And it's making sure they're getting different perspectives. They're not falling into the confirmation bias trap. And they are absolutely hearing their people and using the ideas from the people to make informed decisions. In an absence of information, the first thing they need to do is talk to their people and understand how they're feeling, what they think, and how to respond. And also explaining the reason behind key decisions goes a long way to ensure that you're, one, being inclusive, and two, letting people know exactly what decisions you made and why, so that they understand the reasons for it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, team. That was some really great gems in there that hopefully our watchers, our viewers will take some value from. Let's shift forward a few months and start to think about the post-COVID emergence And we will come out of this, and that's a really positive thing to look forward to. But my question is, what are the big things that you are considering for your business in a post-COVID world? And if you're not there, that's also fine. But what's starting to bubble up for you in a post-COVID world consideration?
There's a Danish proverb, Jimmy, that I've kind of known for a while, for a few years now, which I think kind of thinks through in this one, which is it's difficult to make predictions, especially about the future, or it's perilous to make predictions, especially about the future. And I think that thing's true in the situation. I think being considered and playing kind of the short-term game at this point in time is important. I think 10 years ago we were all talking about the 2020 strategies and how 2020 was going to be amazing. At this moment, 2020 is not meeting anyone's expectations. It's terrible. But we had very high expectations because that's what the focus was, and that's what every organisation's strategy was focused on getting to 2020. And we did some amazing work, and we did achieve some great outcomes. At this point in time, we cannot even be thinking about our 2030 strategies. At this point in time, it's getting through to 2021. And it's getting through kind of hopefully we get a vaccine for this, and hopefully things settle down once everyone's calm. But this is it's really hard to predict exactly how things are going to be, particularly if we get different waves of this disease coming through. It's going to be quite fascinating. So I think post-COVID, from our business point of view, it's going to be continuing to be considered, continuing to be calm, and continue to make decisions based on information that's at hand, and partnering with people who have different points of view. So I think what I've seen over the last 2 months in particular is a lot of people are trying to become economic experts and epidemiologists overnight, and that's dangerous. Leave the expert opinions to the experts, and be cautious of non-expert opinions. So I think kind of from our point of view, it's what does post-COVID-19 look like? We don't know at this point in time, and that's okay. We will find out, and we'll make decisions and cautious decisions as we go through, and I encourage everyone to do the same.
I think, though, if you think, what I'm thinking about is what are the things that have enabled us to transition from where we were to where we are today? What are the core things in that are helping us to be successful and continuing to deliver to our clients? And that's around resilience, both in our people and our systems and our processes. So how can we because we've actually, and innovation, I think, was the other big thing, that I've been incredibly proud of the work that my team have done to invent new stuff, now we work like this. Ta-da! And they've done this work, they've created this amazing stuff, they've trained one another on it in their own bedrooms and kitchens and bathrooms. That innovation and that resilience is what's brought us here. How do we embed that? How do we actually make use of that? Because the one thing we don't know is what's going to happen next. So, but what we do know is what's made us successful to date in responding to it. So what are those core attributes, and how do we embed those, and how do we keep building on those? Because that's what we need. I don't know what we need it for, but I know we're going to need it.
Yeah, I think that methodology, Helen, that saying of necessity is the mother of all invention is singing true here. As we, this is the catalyst for a whole lot of innovation. We're being forced to think of doing, the same thing in different ways, and that is essentially a definition of innovation. And ultimately, I think we'll have some strengths come out of this. That's for sure. We'll have new ways of working, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing. And ultimately, a lot of people will be looking to protect themselves and the businesses rightfully going forward. And so that's going to probably be a little bit risk-averse approach in the next few years, I'd imagine. But again, I think it's just a matter of embracing everyone, including your teams, as part of that journey, and understanding their points of view before any leader makes some critical decisions.
Yeah, I really like what you...
Some of those innovative ideas that could make a huge difference to any business.
Agree. I love the fact that both of you are touching on that concept of essence. So what is the essence of what I'm picking up here from my team, from my business, from my clients, from my customers, and how can I leverage that in the post-COVID world? So it might not be what is my business going to be doing and what are we going to be making or producing or serving, but it could be what have I taken away from this experience that's really going to help me to change and pivot and adapt my business to be stronger, better, faster, leaner, whatever it might be in the post-COVID world. I think there's really nice points been drawn out there. Kate, what are you considering for your business in a post-COVID world?
Well, I guess I'm just going to look at it from a completely different way. I even wrote some notes down there, guys, so I got some good tips. But I'm going to look at it in a different way and basically say, hey, look, that future piece, no, not there, but definitely putting in place a bit of a plan around coming out of, level 4 back to level 3. For us, that's ramping up different parts of our business that currently isn't working. So, actually that technical transitioning people back in to work that's not been there and factoring that. So, it's actually that tangible, what's the transition plan from, 4 back to 3, and making sure that we're still hitting everything that we need to. And then what's that level 3, level 2? What are the things that we can be doing? But, I really like that whole piece there about what have I learned and that resilience and the essence that we've taken out of this and how can we harness that. So I think that that's very powerful for all of us. But yeah, my tack has been, right, let's look at this in a practical way. What are those things? And so, we're actually looking at what are those transitions? How are we going to do that? What does that mean for the different groups? How do we make sure that they're all on the same page, especially if they haven't been at work for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it is. So that's my response on that one for you.
That's great, thank you. Last question for the panel. What advice would you give to a leader who is going through this right now, and what can they do, or where can they reach out? Maybe start with Phil.
I think it depends on what they're going through, James. Most organisations at the moment are worried about the revenue coming through, how their clients are managing. So it's actually understanding the whole impact that people are having. As I said before, people shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. They should absolutely ask for help when they need to, and focus on the facts. So at this point in time, facts are critical. And don't act if you don't know the facts. Embrace your people, talk to them, understand what ideas that they're having. Because what I'm seeing, particularly within New Zealand, is everyone who's in this situation wants to be part of the solution for their businesses and the country. So it's ultimately using that enthusiasm and that motivation to the betterment of everyone. So I guess the key advice to leaders at this point in time is to listen. Would be the one word.
Great. Helen?
I'd echo Phil's point. There is a tremendous amount of goodwill around at the moment in terms of people wanting to be part of the solution, people wanting to see NZ Inc. get through this and come out the other side. And that key point of, don't hesitate to ask for help. Identify what the problem is that you need help with first, and then look at your network and, who do I know that could help me, that could give me advice on this point. Bear in mind that everyone is busy, because everyone's kind of, operating at 120% capacity. So be respectful of the time that you want or you need. But I think if you've got a specific issue and you've talked to your team in the first place to go for the problem, because again, you don't have to solve all this stuff on your own. I think that's the key thing to remember, is to ask the people around you, ask your network, ask for help. But also don't. There's a great piece. I'm not advertising for Harvard Business Review here, but there's another great piece on their site, which is called "The Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." And it's a really good piece. I recommend reading it. And then just check in with yourself about how you're feeling. Because this is a really challenging time. It's actually okay to feel a bit freaked out occasionally. But, be with it, accept it, then pin your ears back and do what you got to do.
See, just drawing on something you said earlier today, Helen and Kate, there's two kind of things that's sat true with me. Is Kate mentioned being authentic. I think that's really important, that leaders are authentic. Everyone's going to look to leaders for that guidance and the answers. And I think at this point in time, we leaders can provide hope for the future, but certainly don't provide false hope. Make sure what you're saying is true, and that you're bringing everyone along the journey with you. So it's not really a change to leadership; it's just a different way of leading in the absence of of information. So that ambiguity is critical, but being comfortable with ambiguity is important too. And I think you're definitely right. Everyone's feeling anxious at the moment in time. Anxious is a lot harder to manage than fear, because anxiety is essentially imagined, not necessarily untrue, but imagined. And until people kind of the anticipation of a threat is just dissipates, anxiety is going to remain there. It's going to hit people in waves. So leaders themselves are not immune to that. They'll be anxious and they'll go through different phases. So lean on your teams and lean on those that you trust. I think at this point in time, trust is incredibly important for leaders in particular. So it's hard. This is not easy. And there's no, like I mentioned earlier, there's no manual for this. So we've just got to focus on one foot, taking one step at a time, but surrounding people who you trust and who have got backs and doing the right thing. Which at this point in time, it's an amazing amount of goodwill out there.
Yeah. I just, couple of thoughts. For me, it's about you don't know everything, and sometimes if you're stressed about stuff, there's fog, right? You don't know where to start. So there's that need to actually just take a moment out, whether that's to go for a walk outside, or to breathe, or just to stop and get up and walk away and go somewhere else and then start again. It's that actual simple steps of, gosh, you just need to look after yourself, right? And you need to stay grounded and you need to stay healthy. And sometimes you just need to take a moment. And I think that's a little bit like what Helen was saying with the grief piece. And then the second point is everything the guys have said, but it's just being genuine, really being genuine. I think as a leader in this scenario, if you're genuine, even if the news isn't great, or it's difficult, or it's in that anxiety, or it's really positive, it's about being genuine and being genuine with your team, that authentic scenario. If that's about being vulnerable, that's still being genuine. If you don't know all the answers and you're needing help, that's being genuine. If you're tired and you've got fatigue coming through in your work and you're seeing that because you're reading stuff and you're looking at it and going, really, did I write that? Yeah. And the need to ask other people to be involved, that's also being genuine. So recognize that, that what Phil was saying, that tight team around you and those people that are there to support, that this is not just on your shoulders, and do share that, but in a genuine way and with the information that you can share.
No, I think there's some great points that have been brought out there. Thank you so much, team. The only two that I can add to that would be kindness. So being really kind to yourself and acknowledging that you are potentially also going through an extremely challenging time for your family, for yourself, for your business. So being kind and allowing yourself to have some decompression. Making those fun moments, making those weekends count, enjoying your evenings, whenever it might be that you have that moment to decompress, you really using that, and then projecting that kindness outwards. So accepting, I think we've touched on this a couple of times today, is accepting that people are going through a challenging time and giving them a bit of latitude in the way they're approaching work right now. Go ahead.
One thing that we did, and I didn't talk about it before when we were talking about fun, because it's slightly different. And I like what Phil was saying, as he said, look, he's got well-being challenges. But we connected in the Australian-New Zealand business. We did a random act of kindness connection. And so we basically put to all the people, basically to get a buddy from the Australian. It might not be someone that they currently know, but just like another person to check in and make sure that you're actively being kind and being connected, and at the same time growing that network and that understanding of the greater business. But I think that point that you've made there, Jimmy, is spot on, and it's in everything that we're doing. It's about being strong, and about being kind and being resilient in this time, and that humanity of making sure that we're actually checking in and listening for the answers. Yeah, really listening to what people are saying. That it's not just a oh, hey, how you going? It's actually digging a little bit deeper and remembering things about people. So if it's your kids coming in or something's going on, that you're actually connecting and remembering those things. So I think that's a really awesome point that you've made.
And even if you're being kind, you can deliver a tough message kindly. And that's, it's not being soft, it's being authentic and kind in the way you deliver a difficult message, perhaps about a redundancy, about a change of direction in the business, about a pivot. That is going to affect people in different ways, but you can be kind in the way you position that right now. The other one that really sprung to mind while we were talking, and I think we've touched on it a couple of times, is really agreeing those ways of working with your boss, with your team, and with yourself. It's one of the things I've been working with some of my clients on, is actually we tend to push ourselves harder when we're working from home. We work longer hours. We consume our commute at our desk instead of in a car or on a bus or on a train. And we're trying to manage the family and needing to agree ways of working with them around us. And we're trying to manage our boss's expectations to deliver. So I think for me, one of the things that really jumps out is agreeing those ways of working, what's acceptable, what's expected, and are we aligned on that is a really key piece of sort of thought leadership that we can give to our leaders right now across New Zealand.
Yeah, Jimmy, just to add to that, with those people who are lucky enough to be able to work from home at this point in time, and also wanting to be part of the solution to New Zealand Inc.'s current problem and also the global problem. The one thing we need to worry about is burnout. So it's not. I don't think productivity is going to be an issue for those who are able to work, but burnout will be, particularly of these 4 weeks that we know we're going to be in lockdown for. So I think it's just we need to be conscious of that. And to your point, I think the agreeing and understanding what people are doing and kind of the hours they're pulling and why. I've had to structure my day in very different ways because both my wife and I are working full-time jobs and looking after the little one. So it's I've been quite open with my team from 11 to 4 today. I will be able to take calls if I'm available, but if I'm not, I'll call them back later. So just being open and honest with team members about and stakeholders around what's going on for you and how you're managing accordingly, and not being like you said before, it's work that's coming to home at the moment, so it's not being apologetic for it. It's just getting on with what you need to do.
I'd agree on that, and there's a couple of things there. I think we can't remember, have to remember that yes, we're in this crisis, and yes, we're in lockdown level 4, but there's a whole lot of key basic things that don't go away, and those are at a really most base tenet. Our employment law and our health and safety laws don't go away, right? So they're sitting there, and we need to make sure that we're touching on those. And that, like during this meeting, I've had one of my team members just saying that they're off to go to the supermarket, right? Which is completely cool because it's been the ways of working. So it's just be transparent, let the rest of the team know where you are, what you're doing, but we still need to check in when we're at work and when we're not at work. We've done quite a lot of work to try and proactively engage with the team because they weren't previously working from home. So what's your working from home environment look like? We've got 2 new significantly different risks that we had previously around the safety elements of people working in their own environments with the level of work, the ergonomics and the setup, back, stress, all those things, and the anxiety and the stressfulness of the situation. So those are 2 things that, 6 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, end of last year, we weren't thinking about to the same degree in our business anyway. We weren't thinking about it in the same degree. But then at the same time, we've also got everyone who's at work in an essential service aspect who are making sure that they're working safely and then also making sure that they're going home safely, right? So there's all these different elements that are going on right now that we're just doing the best that we can, but it's also constantly changing.
Yeah, love that. Any final thoughts, Helen?
Be hopeful.
Love that. Love that. Team, thank you so much for not only sharing your time, but also sharing an enormous amount of wisdom this morning. We've covered how we're reacting with our teams, how we're connecting with our clients, our suppliers, our customers, the messages we're sending out, and how we're managing our business from a financial perspective, and some serious considerations there. Then we transitioned to what are we looking forward to and thinking about as we move into a post-COVID world. And we finished up there on, how can we as leaders really look after ourselves, look after our people, and connect in. A really valuable discussion for any of the viewers, I think, to take inspiration and insight from. And it sounds like we've all taken a couple of notes from each other's positions as well, which is awesome. I really am so grateful for you sparing the time, sparing your knowledge and wisdom, and giving back during this time of humanity, authenticity, and care to the business community out there in New Zealand. So with that, I'll finish up, and thank you so much. Cheers, team. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks,
Bye.
Kate. Phil, nice to